Okay. We should be both recording and live streaming. So whenever you are ready, Chair Lyle Smith, or sorry, Mayor Lyle Smith.
Thank you, Katie. I know you're switching meetings much like we are. All right, so today is July 7th, 2021. It is just after 7 p.m. and this is the City Commission regular meeting. I'm going to calling that meeting to order. And for the record, we will be entering executive session immediately following this meeting pursuant to ORS 192.6602I. So with that, Ms. Riggs, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Here. All right, so I believe the first item is flag salute, which we are skipping for virtual meetings, and we don't have any ceremonies and proclamations, but we do have some citizen comments. Ms. Riggs, are those folks ready?
So the first up is Betty Mum, and yes, Betty is on the Zoom, and I'm going to admit someone else into the meeting that I'm not sure who they are, but I'm guessing that is one of our citizen comments. So we'll begin with Ms. Mum. If you could please unmute yourself and begin by stating your first and last name and city of residency for the record.
Betty Mum, Oregon City. At the work session in May, you were discussing the sidewalk problems in some of the neighborhoods. The city manager only suggested that you may want to use the pavement maintenance utility fee to fix the sidewalk problems. In 2007, I was the chamber representative to TAC. We had the opportunity to discuss at great length this fee and finally recommended to the City Commission at the time the adoption of the street maintenance fee, now known as pavement maintenance utility fee. The intent of this fee was for maintaining current neighborhood streets only. Sidewalks are important, but sidewalks are not a part of this fee. This fee is already being diluted with money going to projects that it was not intended for. Please fix the sidewalk problem, but not by diluting this fee even more. Thank you.
All right. All right, and I believe our next public comment person is Tracy Rock.
Yeah, and I don't see either Tracy or Dan Burge on the line. So I apologize, those folks are not with us this evening.
Okay. Is there anybody else? She would have had to have let them in. I don't see anybody else, so, okay. I think we've covered citizen comment then. All right, so we will move on. We do not have any presentations. So we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. And along with that comes the review of the consent agenda. Is there any item? It's a very long consent agenda. Is there any item that anybody would like to pull? Commissioner McGriff, you have something?
Yes, the same one that I asked for last time, which would be 7A again. We asked for this to be brought back for further discussion, and I'm not sure why it's on the consent agenda. So that's the one.
Okay. Anything else? Any other items from the commissioners? I don't see anybody raising their hands. So do I have, we'll pull 7A for discussion in general business. And do I have a motion on the agenda?
Yes, I'd like to move that we adopt the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Right, Ms. Briggs, will you call the roll?
Yes, I will. Let's see here. Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. And you're muted, but I did see your mouth move and I believe it said aye. Yes, thank you. And then Mayor Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, so that moves us along to public hearings. We have 8A. This is a resolution regarding stormwater system development charges. Mr. Lewis?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Katie, if you could pull up my
Welcome
presentation. It's good to
back,
see you all.
Mr. Lewis.
It's good to see you all after 4th of July. So yes, it feels good to be back. So thank you. Yeah, so tonight I've got myself and John Ghilarducci, who's on the call as well. And I'm going to go through just a few introductory slides to talk a little bit about the topic. And then John's going to go over information that you've all seen before. So shouldn't be anything new here. This is the public hearing on SDCs. We've been through most of the meat of this before, and we were required to do a 90-day notice, which is come and gone. And that period of time allows for comments, and we didn't receive any comments on this SDC packet. So yeah, so the background, thank you, Katie. Let's see where we at here. That looks a little large. Is that showing up correctly on your screen? Okay. So yeah, just a little bit of background. John's going to talk about the methodology and, you know, all the things that go into development of a SDC, and then we'll open it up for questions. The next slide. Okay, thank you there. Stormwater master plan. You know, it's been a long time since we've updated our master plan. We now have an updated master plan that was adopted by the commission in 2020. We've had some meetings since then in early 2021 to talk about the proposed SDC, and we'll review that again tonight. But as a result of that, we got authorization from the commission to move forward with the 90-day notice for public hearing, which was published on April 8th and was scheduled to happen tonight. So we hit that mark nicely. Next slide, please. So you've seen this map in a couple different versions, but this is our capital projects list. I guess not planning to necessarily go through any of these unless you'd like to talk about them, but this shows up in this presentation and actually shows up in the next presentation in a little different format. But just remember, our SDC increase is relatively low, and a lot of that has to do with the capital project list being mostly in established neighborhoods. The stormwater systems that will serve new development are generally going to be built by that development or built by development dollars outside of the SDCs that we collect. There are a couple of projects on the fringe here that have some growth component to them that would be included in our analysis of SDCs. But for the most part, these are in kind of the heart of Oregon City and areas that are already developed. And then last slide is really just a reminder that this has been a long time commission goal, and we're happy to deliver it. I hope to have that by done by June 30th, but here we are, first part of July, and into your next round of goals. And this one, I think, it didn't make the list because we had the assumption that we were going to go ahead and adopt a new SDC prior to the fiscal year. But it's a long time goal, and we're looking forward to accomplishing it. So the next slide is John's presentation. So John, you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, John. And thank you, Mayor and Commission. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So the SDC calculation that you will see is made up of two components as the law allows. There's a reimbursement fee, which is a buy-in to the existing system. That's the stormwater system that has already been built, that has capacity that's available for growth for new users. So we carve out that cost of the existing system that's unused and available, and we divide that by the growth that it will serve, and that gives us our reimbursement fee. The second component is called the improvement fee, and it comes right out of that stormwater master plan. This is all about future projects that are planned, and the portions of those projects which will provide new capacity in the stormwater system for growth for future users. So to calculate that improvement fee, we just take those costs of capacity increasing projects and divide it by the growth that they will serve, and that gives us our improvement fee, and together they equal the system development charge. So the system development charge is supposed to represent that share of capacity in the stormwater system that's needed to serve each increment of new growth. Next slide, please. So starting with growth, and we'll just quickly go through the different elements in the calculation. In order to estimate the denominator, we looked at the city's existing customer base in what we're calling equivalent service units. You'll see the rate expressed as a rate per equivalent residential unit, or ERU. They're the exact same thing. So we look at the customer base in ESUs. We look at the projected customer base in the future, and we do that using the city's housing needs analysis. And those future conditions minus what we have now equal the projected growth that will be served by the stormwater system into the future. Next slide, please. So here are those numbers. We estimate the number of current equivalent service units or equivalent residential units as 24,206, expected to grow in 10 years to 2029, and then to 2039 in 20 years by 2,406 ESUs or ERUs. Of course, we know that growth will be, more or less than that number, but that's the forecast that we use as the denominator in our SDC calculation. Next slide, please. So the cost basis for the reimbursement fee, now we're looking at the numerator of that reimbursement fee calculation. Represented graphically here, it's the unused capacity in the existing stormwater system, so that can accommodate future development and future users. Next slide, please. We estimate the existing system cost about $8.9 million. You see that in the asset original cost column. And of those assets, about 1.3 million is unused capacity. And you do this by estimating the remaining life of these assets. So about, as you see there, 1.3 million in unused capacity left in that $8.9 million system. So that'll be our reimbursement fee cost basis. Next slide, please. And the improvement fee, if you remember, is based on the cost of planned projects from the Stormwater Master Plan. And it's only the portion of those projects which will add capacity for growth. So if it's correcting existing deficiencies or replacing existing infrastructure, we can't include it. We can only include that portion of the projects which are increasing the size of the system. Next slide, please. So of the almost $23 million in projects, only about 1.3 million is eligible, and this is based on Brown and Caldwell's analysis in the Stormwater Master Plan. So most of these projects are either correcting deficiencies or they're replacing infrastructure, some of the older infrastructure that's there in the city. So the eligible portion is relatively modest there. You see less than 6%. Next slide, please. So it all comes together. Oops, on slide 14, where we've got the reimbursement fee cost basis of almost 1.3 million. We divide that by the projected growth to the end of the planning period in 20 years of 2,406, and our reimbursement fee is $533. The improvement fee, coincidentally, almost the same cost basis, although if you remember, this is a very small portion of that $23 million capital plan, divided by growth to the end of the period, $536. Those two fees together equal the total SDC proposed at $1,070 per EDU or ESU or ERU. They're all the same thing. So 1,070 is the proposed charge. Next slide, please. So as John mentioned, this is actually a very modest increase over the city's current $956 per ERU stormwater SDC. And you see where that fits in with some of your neighbors in the region if you were to go up to the $1,070 calculated charge. And that's all of my prepared material. Thank you.
Right. John, does that conclude your staff report presentation?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And thank you, John from FCS Group. That was a good recap. We've seen that presentation before. So I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if there's any public comment for us tonight on this item. Katie.
I do not have anybody registered for this item, Mayor, but I did want to let you know that Tracy Rock has now joined us. She was one of the ones under the regular citizen comment. So I just wanted to let you know that now.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. So we're at least going to finish this item before we tackle that. So, all right, with no public comment, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I simply just hope that when we did these calculations and we divide up the work between correcting deficiencies and adding capacity, that when those numbers were compiled, for example, if I got to trench out a line to correct a deficiency, how do they divide up those dollars if at the same time you're going to increase capacity by putting in a larger line? Do the ratepayers bear the whole cost of the trenching and all the SDCs cover is the new purchase of the new line and installation? I want to make sure that that's equitable. So Mr. Lewis, if you could answer that.
That's a great question. It's typical for them to do a line item by line item cost estimate of the project, right? So, typical line items, trenching, backfill, manholes, all that. So they'll do, for each of those projects, they did a detailed cost estimate. And then they look at the amount of growth in the basin in which that facility exists. And they look at the amount of existing development in that area as well. And they divide the total project cost by that. So you know, just about every one of these projects is going to end up with, just because it typically makes sense to build a bigger pipeline and, you know, make sure you're, you know, if you know, I know, you know, the hydraulic characteristics of a pipeline, typically you don't want them to run much over half. And so we've got pipelines that are well over that. So even though it's a larger capacity line, these projects for the most part are serving that existing flow rate. And as we see more I&I projects develop, we're expecting to see more stormwater needing to get to these pipelines, but it will be for those existing neighborhoods. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as you said, I certainly understand laminar flow through pipes, but I just want to make sure that there's trenching and backfill. I don't think one component of it, that the ratepayers should pay that whole thing, that it should be divided equitably, because the other part of that that's accomplished through trenching and backfill is capacity improvement. So I hope that those divisions were equitably and fairly made. I heard what you said about dividing up project value, but to me, that's a 50-50 split there.
I think I'm not sure if there was a question in there, but you know, I guess, you know, just knowing this dilemma of trying to take a project and split out existing capacity from new capacity, we look at that very hard and try to make an equitable determination about that. And there's an engineering analysis that goes into doing that. There's no, you know, they don't have, the engineers that do that really don't have any, you know, anything to gain by, you know, weighting one or the other.
Well, I know they don't. I just want to make sure that that same hole that I dig and fill in is split equally between the two parties, because they both benefit, not relative value of the two projects. And I'm not sure that's how that's done. I don't need a further discussion. I just wanted to make mention of it. There's no question in there. Thanks.
Yeah, I see where he's going. I guess the question, is it a 50-50 split, or is it a proportion based on the contribution of each party to the project? So say the new capacity is a certain percent versus rehabilitation is a certain percent, and you figure up that percentage split, and is that applied to the trenching and the stuff so that it's adequately shared, or is it truly 50-50?
Well, I guess if we had a project cost, $100,000 project cost, and we knew 60% of the property in that basin was existing, and the other 40% was for new development, then the project cost would be $60,000 would go to kind of the rate side of things, and $40,000 of the cost would go to the new side, or the SDC element of that, on the improvement side. Yeah, does that make sense? That I must be missing the mark here a little bit, but
I assume that's where Commissioner O'Donnell was trying to get to, was this difference between.
Yeah, you broke it down.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I get it.
Yeah, I think Commissioner O'Donnell is saying, you know, some of those costs don't need to be weighted. They should be 50-50 split, because somebody's got to dig that hole and both parties are benefiting. So does it need to be 60-40, or why not just make it 50-50? Because, you know, there's two sides of the coin, right? Or two pieces of the parties involved, kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. Thanks, Mayor.
So John, I think you've had your hand come up a couple of times. Do you want to?
Well, I think we're precluded from doing that. We divide the cost by the capacity as has been described. The law is really clear about protecting us from charging more than an equitable share to the developer. So if part of that project is serving existing customers, if they're benefiting, even if they didn't cause the replacement to occur or that project to occur, we can only split it proportionally between the benefiting parties. So I don't think we have the leeway to charge it 50/50. We follow the capacity of the improvement, how it will be served. The one thing we don't do is, because the other way that you could do it is cost it all out to meet the needs of existing customers and then only charge the incremental additional cost to growth in the SDC. Then you'd end up with a much, much lower number to growth. So by following this capacity method, we think we are very appropriately allocating the cost between existing and future customers.
We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. I only had one question, and that's in the resolution. In section 5, you mentioned an annual adjustment based on a change in the Seattle Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index. Is that essentially saying that there's your annual inflation value or construction cost? Is that in layman's terms what that is?
Yes. So that's a mechanism by which we would inflate that, as opposed to just picking a 3% or, picking another indices. We look pretty hard at the construction indices. And that's, by the way, that Seattle number used to be, they had a Portland number, but the Engineering News Record, who publishes all that information, collects all that data and produces those numbers. They have limited the number of cities that they do it in, but that's and John could probably speak to this, that's the industry standard. You find the city that makes the most sense that's in your region and you apply that.
Okay. Well, seeing no further questions or discussion or deliberation, is there a motion? Nobody likes this project.
Wasn't about liking, but I'll move that we approve resolution 21-35, adopting methodology, project list, et cetera, and repeals resolution number 04-47.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Mr. Kabizman. Sorry, I caught him off guard.
No.
You need him to read anything?
Nope, we're good.
All right, well then skip that. That's why I was looking so surprised. So Ms. Riggs, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so we're going to move on to general business. I guess before we do that, we do have the citizen comment that missed the really early in the meeting call for comments. I'm just looking if there's general consensus to hear that 3 minutes of citizen comment, or I know it's out of order on our agenda, so I would need a motion to reconsider our agenda order if that's what we want to do.
I think they were trying to get in and they were unable to get in. So I would support that and make a motion that we allow it.
Okay. I think we can do this by general consensus. Is there anybody ever, nobody's objecting to that. I don't see. So I'm gonna, by general approval, we'll revisit that citizen comment item right now. So it's Tracy Rock. I see her phone. So Tracy, if you're there, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm so sorry. I had 2 meeting IDs and dialed into the wrong meeting ID. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you, and we all certainly understand technical difficulties. So you can state your name and the city of residence for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Rock, and I live in Oregon City. I'm requesting that the council look at short-term rental opportunities in the McLaughlin neighborhood. Our current code is circa 1996-ish and not really in touch with current e-commerce or tourism opportunities. Oregon City is lacking in the hotel accommodations, which affect our restaurants, museums, and wedding and event venues, which has been hit particularly hard with COVID. Why are we sending our tourism dollars to West Lynn and Lake Oswego and Southeast Portland? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Airbnb stats report that 42% of daytime spending stays in the neighborhood where a tourist stays. And I think we would all benefit from that 42%. Why the McLaughlin neighborhood? We have amazing a main street that offers great food, atmosphere, at least 3 museums in walking distance, 2 wedding and event venues, and a haunted tour, but we have limited parking. So if people could stay in houses close by and walk to all of these places, that would be fantastic. Willamette Falls Hospital and is soon to add a new cancer center. And the hospital would really benefit from short-term rental opportunities that would help families be close to their loved ones during beginning of life, a long medical procedure, or even end-of-life vigils. Lastly, I think we all know that we have felt the housing shortage and inflation in our market. And again, according to Airbnb, 52% of the hosts live in low to moderate income households. And 53% of those hosts report that their income generated from short-term rentals allows them to keep their homes, especially in markets like this. And then 48% of the revenue generated from short-term rentals is actually used for household expenses, groceries, utilities, things like that. So I also see short-term rentals as a way to keep people in their homes, in our city, and in our neighborhoods. And my hope is that this great city can craft an innovative practice and code that will benefit the city, tourists, and local property owners. I asked this group to please look at codes regulating bed and breakfast, including zoning, commercial versus residential. I also request that they look at the fee structure and the timeline, as both are cost prohibitive for low to income moderate households. And I hope that this commission will include short-term rentals in their current housing inventory discussions and part of the overall tourism plan for the OC 2040 comprehensive plan. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rock, for your comments. All right. Any comments or anything from the commission before we move on? All right, seeing none, we will move on in the agenda. Our next item is general business. We pulled item 7A, so let's go ahead and tackle that one. That was the tree recovery program. I'm sure Ms. Turway is here with us for any questions. Commissioner McGriff, you pulled this item. Do you have questions, or is there discussion of the commission for this item?
Hang on just a second. I believe at our last meeting that we had asked for a rewrite, and I believe that the rewrite has occurred. However, consent agenda does not allow for us to have a discussion about it. I particularly focused my attention on the content for the utility bill insert, which was my major concern from last time. And it is certainly better. It is much more positive. I guess maybe I'm being a little picky uni here, but I'm not really sure about the term "our lost tree canopy." I don't think we lost it. I think they got damaged. And some of the trees obviously came down on their own volition, and others came down because they were a hazard. And I presume that we're going back to the thing that is, if you had damaged trees that have not been removed, then you can use this process. So some people have already, as I stated, unfortunately used this as an excuse to take out trees that weren't damaged and shouldn't have never been taken out, but they're gone now nevertheless. So I guess part of the comment I want to make in the second paragraph, it says the waiver will apply to trees that came down or had to be removed due to ice storm damage. And I'm assuming that means that the waiver will only apply to that.
Yes, I'll let Kelly Reed, planner with the city, talk about it in a little bit more detail as well. But yes, that's the intent.
Thanks. Yes, that's correct. The waiver applies to only trees that came down or need to be removed due to ice storm damage.
Okay, then I would add that word that it only applies to that and underline it with bold. The paragraph that says the number of exceptions is the same, I think, as before, and that the city will continue to sponsor tree efforts. So the last paragraph said, if you would like to replant your own trees, be sure to consult our street tree species list and placement requirements. And I think that to me is pretty critical. I know that in the past, people have selected trees from the list that are not appropriate for the parking strip that they have because they like it. So I'm trying to figure out how do we go about assisting in a way that is a little more proactive instead of just suggesting.
Ms. Reed. Natural Resources Committee is also taking a look at the list for the appropriate of those species. We're going to talk about that again a week from today at their next meeting as well. But we do have some information on our website to help the community pick the appropriate tree species. And when we speak to them, if they call the city, we certainly point them in that direction, as well as identification of that educational material on our submittal applications and materials.
I would add that I think most of the street tree replantings will occur through the Friends of Trees program, the contract that you all approved last month. And so, we work with Friends of Trees to make sure that they're choosing the right species in the right place, right location. And we are every person who submits their information online regarding the trees that they removed or that fell, they're getting an automatic reply that lets them know that they're going to be first in line for the Friends of Trees program.
Okay, I think that's excellent. I would hope that maybe you could add a sentence here to say something to that effect so that it stands out to them, because that was my assumption, but I'm not assuming that everybody who will read this, hopefully they will read it, will make that assumption unless they go on. But maybe if it's highlighted that we will have this program, it can save you money. So maybe you should wait till use that program instead of trying to do it yourself. I mean, that would be my hope. That would be my desire. Because I know how diligent they are, and they're going to make suggestions for people. I know when I was selecting the one for my parking strip, I was very careful about, I chatted with them first and said, okay, this is what I think I'd like. Here's my parking strip. I went out and measured it, and they concurred with everything that I selected. And so I just had to see which one was available. So I would support you moving forward with this and taking, moving it forward. You could add a sentence that talks a little bit about the Friends of Tree program, because I think that's critical, and particularly if it says that it will help them save money. That would be great.
We can absolutely do that before it goes to print. We can make those changes.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, any other comments on the content of the utility bill insert or anything else on this item? I know several commissioners wanted to see that water or utility bill insert. So. All right, so seeing none, we need a motion.
I would move that, let me get my right item here, that we approve resolution 2132, authorizing the use of tree mitigation funding for the tree recovery program in response to the 2021 winter storm damage as was amended and suggested.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can you please call the roll, Ms. Briggs?
Yes. Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Reed, Ms. Turway. All right, so we're going to move on in general business to item number 9A. This is a resolution regarding stormwater service rates. Another very popular topic we've talked about multiple times.
Good evening.
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry to interrupt. Good evening again. Yes, my newfound favorite topic of stormwater, and I hope it's your favorite as well, or one of your favorites. So tonight we're going to bring, well, first of all, I need to acknowledge we've got Bob Balgos, who's been the project engineer on this, who's been working with John Ghilarducci, who's also on the call, to kind of help us work through the different scenarios and the discussions and making sure we're staying within the legal parameters of what we can do with rates. And so just want to acknowledge them. Yeah, before you tonight, we're bringing you a few options for Resolution 2118 to establish that minimum equivalent residential unit monthly rate to be charged for stormwater fees. Next slide, please. Oh, let's
Bob,
see.
did you want me to
Slides.
share my screen or do you want to share yours?
Yeah, go ahead and share yours,
Okay,
Katie.
I'll share mine. Got it.
I've got it on my screen, so I forgot to look at your screen.
Sorry. Here you go.
Yeah,
That's
John
okay.
said next slide. I was like, I think we have a technical problem. All right.
Okay,
Go, John.
next slide, Katie.
Yep. And getting there here.
Oh, I'm so looking forward
There we
to
go.
in-person meetings. So hopefully that'll come up.
I don't think you meant the electric slide, did you?
No, I didn't mean that. If you recall, earlier this year, we presented 3 program scenarios, including the base level of service, the moderate level of service, and the full capital level of service. And the feedback we heard was a preference for the moderate level of service, but we also presented this information with a focus on that unit rate. And we missed the discussion on how the unit rate impacted the non-single family properties. So we also were in the process of learning more about federal funding that could be applied to local stormwater programs or water programs, utility programs, capital improvement programs through the American Recovery Plan. And you asked staff to return with more rate impact information to address these questions. So we did that with the new information in hand. We brought that, boy, it's not been very long, last month, even though lots happened between now and then. It was, I think, our last meeting. And at that, we agreed that the ARP funding would be better to allocate to the city's water capital needs. And you also asked staff to look at additional rate scenarios with the idea of trying to lessen that impact on the non-residential customers. So we've packaged a couple more scenarios for you. The slides looks very similar. We're trying to stay consistent with that. So just know that you'll see slides that look repetitive, but may have different numbers. But there was also a couple other items to explore. So we wanted to report our thoughts on these items and then open it up for your consideration and see if we can reach consensus on a rate resolution that both meets some of the stormwater master plan needs and is attainable for the community. So next slide, please, Katie. So here we go again with that proposed capital projects. I provided you with a general overview of these at our last meeting. These all come out of our newly adopted master plan. So I won't go through that again, but I just wanted to share with you that we spent a fair amount of time, Bob and others in the office spent a fair amount of time kind of scrutinizing the capital list. asking the kind of questions like, is there anything that we know now that we didn't know when we completed the stormwater master plan? And can we, is there certainty about projects? Is there projects that maybe we should push out? And for the most part, CIP number 5, Harding Boulevard Sanitary Disconnect, that project was completed using sanitary funds because of the impact that it had on I&I reduction. So that we justified that. We're moving forward with the Scanner Canyon improvement project. So that one's, definitely a project that needs to be included in our list. But again, for the most part, these are projects that are in our existing communities. A lot of them have at peak events resulted in flooding. There is some opportunity to push things out, I think, if that's what the commission's decision is. I don't think that there's anything that should be struck from the list. By the way, that Harding Boulevard project that we funded through sanitary we made sure, and it had already been removed from the capital list in the rate model. So anyway, we see these projects as necessary, needed projects that, if we don't deal with, we're going to continue to get community feedback on why didn't we take care of those projects. So the one thing I don't want to do is shorten the list. We could push out the timing of those, I suppose, but I don't want to shorten the list. Next slide. So I wanted to include this slide for reference if we need it. I think you've got the gist of the city's rate methodology. Basically, we have a base rate for a single family residential, and everything else is based on an area with on the property area with also something we call the development intensity factor considered in there. So depending on how impervious the site is, there may be a reduction factor that's in there, but it's kind of, if you talk equity, it is equitable, I guess, in the sense that we have an assumed square footage for a single family lot of impervious area, and we apply that to any kind of non-single family development. Next slide, please. I went through this one before. I'm going to go through it again. So the area range number, or ARN, is also pretty straightforward. I kind of described that in the application. We don't round up or round down on the ARN. We simply apply the math of area times the difference divided by 2,500. And we use the DIF, or development intensity factor, for, again, those non-residential properties or non-single family residential properties of somewhere between 0.7 and 0.9 discount. And we found other instances in our review of the data where customers have pursued rate adjustments based on their situations, and we look at those. The code supports that kind of a review. So just know that when customers, and often it's usually not the residential customers, it's often a commercial customer who will come to us and say, hey, I think that there's an inequity here, and we will take a look at that. So you've seen this matrix. This is the level of service 2 option. We based all of our scenarios on that level of service 2. We believe that while there is a level of service 1 option, it's we've come to recognize that we wouldn't recommend that. The city commission can choose that, but we as staff wouldn't recommend that. But this level of service 2 option comes with an increase implemented over 3 years. So this is the same rate increase of 15.5% over 3 years, and then drops back to 3%. And we've got, you've seen some of the impacts of that to, well, these are the numbers again for single family residents, but you've seen some of the impacts to that for the non-residential, and we'll show you a slide on that one as well. Level of service 2, 5-year, we looked at trying to find a solution that would get us under a 10% rate increase annually. And so level of service 2 over 5 years does that, and still maintains a $1.6 million fund for all master plan projects and $800,000 a year for what we're calling critical maintenance needs and some additional maintenance as well. So this scenario here is a result of what we heard from you at the last meeting. We only provided 2 additional ones. Our feeling is if the commission isn't excited about any of these, then we just really kind of need to know what would be a favorable rate increase that we could pursue. We've been before you for several meetings now, so we're kind of getting there. This was an attempt, and this kind of lands somewhere between that level of service 2 and level of service 1. We took the 2-year, level of service 2, implementing rate increases over 5 years, and then we applied an 80% capital, so it's basically a 20% reduction. And so that 20% kind of approximately equals 4.6 million. So this is another kind of approach that we could look at. Yes, it would cover less funding. We're showing 1.4 million for master plan projects per year and 500,000 for critical maintenance needs, really only. And this option again lowers the rate increase to 8% over 5 years, and then it would go back to the 3%. This slide shows, it's a summary slide, so it shows that level of service 2, the 2 different options, so kind of side-by-side comparison of the rates per year for that, for that single family residence charge. And again, we did this for each of the scenarios. So you've seen this one, and this is one of the examples that one of the big concerns was the impact on those larger customers. So this again shows that 15.5% for the first 3 years, and then returns to 3% annual rate increase thereafter. These slides were in your packet, I want to believe, as well, right? Okay, so that's good news. And then this is level of service 2 over the 5-year period. So we're showing that again, 9.75% rate increase for 5 years, and then returns to the 3%. And so year 1 for the large multifamily apartment, they would see that rate increase of $255 a month. Keep in mind, these folks do. I think it seems to a citizen who pays a monthly rate of something much less, in that $8 to $10 range. It seems like a lot. These are big properties with, in theory, rent or revenue to cover that. But anyway, that particular scenario, so that smaller number in the box there, and I know you're not seeing my cursor, but in that year 1 column under multifamily apartment is a $255 monthly change over the duration of that year. And one other thing I should mention on these, the stormwater rate changes in January. So the resolution that the example resolutions that we've provided, it's July, it's essentially 1st of July. So we have decided that we would implement this on, if adopted, on a January date. So there's, essentially another 6 months for our customer base to get informed about this and understand what's coming, and they can plan accordingly. And then, so I don't know if we need to go back now, but this kind of shifts from kind of the money piece to some of the other things that we heard about. The city commission seemed interested in the idea of separating out a non-residential rate and adopting that early and giving the commercial folks a little more time. We were originally targeting a July 1 implementation, but we've missed that. So, and then hearing this, our feeling was well, one, we're concerned about trying to split those out because of a couple of reasons. One is just our utility billing program is complicated enough. It can be done. I will say that it can be done. We've got an excellent team in our finance department, so it can be done. It's just awkward and a lot of handwork that goes into trying to deal with these commercial accounts. So trying to break them out into a separate billing cycle was a concern. Our current stormwater rate methodology has a long history of equity, and implementing a different timeline does create an equity issue. We've talked a little bit to John Gillarducci about that, and there's would we be sued? We've been sued for less, I think. So let's just say it's possible and likely if a residential customer got a rate increase, but the commercial customers didn't, that could come up. So to us, it kind of seems to overcomplicate what's currently a relatively simple and transparent, I call it a process, but more of a program. So, and then I've got one more other slide there. So we also kind of heard, and I think this was you, Commissioner McGriff, a request to further investigate level of service 1, the baseline. And we did, like I said, we looked pretty hard at these projects and levels of service. Our stormwater program is, we've done a great job with the program that we have, and we'll continue to do with whatever, the customer base can take on. But we wouldn't recommend that, I guess. So decreasing from level of service 1 is definitely something we wouldn't recommend. But again, this is about, making a decision about what the community can handle. So we recognize the challenges with that. So next slide, please. So we have prepared 3 different resolutions, and if none of those are something we can get some level of consensus on, or an approved vote at least, then we would like direction on what the commission would approve for a rate increase. And last slide is really all about your discussion, and I'd like to continue to hear more and see what we can do. We've been in front of you a fair amount. We're kind of at a loss as to what kind of engineering or science we apply to this to get to something that you're interested in voting to approve. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I guess I'm going to start off. We received some public comment from Craig Danielson, again, where he provided some recommendations and referenced some alternatives or options that were provided in the appendix area of the FCS report. And The one that got my attention that I wanted to ask about was to consider changing the ERU to 3,000 square feet from the current 2,500 square feet to match the 3,000 ESU. I think this is trying to align the non-residential to the single family residential with the same square footage in the ESU and ERU calculations. So do you have any comments on that, either from you or Bob or John from FCS on, is that a viable something to consider as a nod? I mean, I recognize that all of these are really impacting our large non-residential customers probably the most. I don't have any issues with the single family home rate adjustments for me personally. There seems to be a big jump when, when you're looking at the non-residential and then you got these really large ones. And so this was a suggestion. So I thought I would ask you. That seemed like maybe a minor's all relative, but it seemed like a minor suggestion. Any comments on that, Mr. Lewis or John?
Well, we shared that email with John. I'm not sure, we didn't talk about it necessarily, so I don't know how much effort he put into studying that. But when I read that, it was interesting to me that the 3,000 unit was used, and maybe John can explain that. But it kind of, I read it as it was yet another example, maybe another agency or something. But John, do you have a better explanation about that 3,000? Because that would essentially take your revenue from on the commercial side and cut that by 6, basically. Yeah.
So as part of this work, we did sort of a qualitative analysis of the rate structure and talked about it internally with staff. And staff was real comfortable leaving the rate structure as it is with the 2,500. And however, that the ERU or ESU, whatever you want to call it, that value in most stormwater utilities is intended to represent the average amount of impervious surface area on a single family residence in that location. So when we do, and you establish that average by random sampling single family residences, and you measure 150 plus single family residences to find that average, it is usually higher than 2,500. So, and when we've done these studies recently, they're often 3,000 plus that the average square footage of a single family residence. Oregon City has a lot of older homes and older developed single family residences. Those tend to be smaller footprints, so there's really no way to know without doing that measurement what that average might be. And there's no law or rule that says you need to use that average to establish the ERU value. So it's really up to the city what you choose to do. And if you want to look closer at that value, what it would do is it reduces the total number of billable units or ERUs. So the rate has to be higher for everyone in order to recover the same amount of revenue. So it just shifts the burden of cost recovery slightly back towards single family residential and reduces the rates on non-residential developed property by increasing that ERU value. But it is a policy choice of the commission whether you want to go down that road.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was the only question that I had was asking about that and asking for clarification. So other commissioners, do you have questions, comments, discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell, so you're not muted.
I guess I'm standing up then. So I was curious about this development intensity factor. Is there, and I know Mr. Danielson referred to some of this, is there any credit if they install like permeable surfaces or water containment things? Is there any rate, can they favorably impact their rates in any way?
So we generally have not done anything with regard to a stormwater improvement that's a development requirement. If a developer were to go above and beyond, let's say, establish a green roof or provide, a lot more benefit than even what the standard requires, we've got ability to consider that, and we'd probably use that DIF factor to apply that. But in Mr. Danielson's case, when so they didn't have much at all, if any, stormwater management on that site until they developed, if I recall that correctly. So when they redeveloped and put the Safeway on that property, it triggered a lot of development requirements, kind of like what we're doing on First Street, right? We've got redevelopment of an existing site, significant enough, you got to meet all the new requirements that a new development would require. So, we're having to build a lot of infrastructure on the First Street site. And that was true for Mr. Danielson. To some degree, it was mostly about detention, underground detention. And so we see that as kind of a standard requirement. There may be a neighbor who developed this, years back before we had those standards that, wouldn't have that, but they met the development requirement of the time. And so, no, we typically don't see those, Commissioner O'Donnell. And I think we'd have to put some energy into, again, what kind of improvement would qualify.
Well, here's what I think. I think we better be prepared to answer why the 3% cap on water doesn't apply to this, because people are going to think it does. So be prepared for that. I think that any business, and I don't know how much business contributes to our overall system maintenance versus residential. I think I asked that, but I don't believe I ever got an answer if it's 80% residential, 20%. I don't know what that number is. It doesn't matter. It's distasteful to me. I think whatever we do tonight is going to impact our success in trying to get water rates passed in the future. I seriously question whether that will be a successful effort. But in the end, I'm the one that tried to spread it out. I felt the 15.5% was incredibly distasteful over 3 years. And of all the things in front of us, if I have to pick one, I'd pick the 8% over 5 years and 80% improvements, capital improvements, and pick and choose carefully what we need versus what we want. But that would be the way I would go tonight. And I'll leave it to my fellow commissioners to discuss further.
All right, Commissioner McGriff.
Well, I'm not going to speak to anything regarding the water rate, but what my big concern is that over the years, previous commissions have just kind of kicked this can down the road, and I think we need to make a hard decision about whether we're going to continue to do that, which I don't think is appropriate, but we need to be moderate in our approval, and also look at the level of expectations. It's always a hard sell to talk to people about raising rates for anything, but we're investing in our future. And I think that is something that I have been cognizant about through all of the discussions we've had with this. And I'm either looking at the middle of the road. I agree with John. I don't think we should have two separate paths, because that to me would be confusing. And I'm thinking of the administrative headache that would cause. And I want to try to use our staff wisely. So I'm looking at sort of going down the middle of the road with the 5 year, or the 5 year with the 80% capital. That still gets us some of the way there. All the critical maintenance won't get done, but we'll be further down the road than we were. So that's my feeling about it.
Commissioner Morrow.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not comfortable with the 15%, but in the same way, I'm a little hesitant about the 80% capital as well, and so therefore I am in favor of option 2 at this moment.
All right. So Mr. Lewis, while Rocky's thinking, I'm wondering about the are we picking the 5-year interval before we return to 3%? Are we picking that because we need that 5 years in order to generate enough revenue in order to complete projects? Otherwise, we won't be able to complete the projects within the 20-year horizon. Or is it possible that we could increase that 5-year duration and make it 8 or 10 years, and that would lower the rate even further? I guess I assume it's about the rate of revenue generation and our ability to complete the stormwater project. So I'm guessing my question to be, I know I'm going in circles, so you know where I'm headed. So like, is there an 8 or 10-year option? Does that give you enough time to complete the stormwater projects in the 20-year horizon that you've planned for, or does it has to be 5 is the longest we can go before we can return to the 3? Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. So the answer, if I can summarize, and I may need a little help from Bob here, because Bob and others in the office put a lot of energy into this, and I got kind of the summary of it. But the summary version is we really looked at what we could do in terms of funding capital projects, and still we were really kind of trying to get the rate under 10%, and it worked in that 5-year while still funding capital. And I think, John, you were also involved in that conversation a little bit with Bob. And so my understanding is you push it out too much further and you really struggle for the first several years to fund the capital needs. And our community, one thing that I find is they get frustrated with rate increases and then not seeing the capital happen, even though they also get frustrated when the capital happens because it's an inconvenience. So we're kind of in a catch-22, I'll tell you that much. But yes, the answer is 5 years was, about the maximum. We were trying to get a level increase, get it under 10%, and still be able to feel good about the revenue that we were going to acquire to be able to deliver capital. We can push capital out. I mean, that's kind of always been my theory on that. I think the critical maintenance we got to do, but the capital is, what we can do. So but we didn't think moving it out more. Does that say a 6th year or a 7th year? If you ran that scenario, is there something there? Maybe.
Yeah, I guess it's really getting at, do you anticipate any critical failures in that, if we, put time between now and when you're able to actually do critical capital projects, like if you could still do critical maintenance things during that time period, so people were still seeing activity happening. And if we could, if we were feeling pretty good or good enough that we weren't going to have any critical failures on our system that we couldn't manage, then maybe that was something to consider, maybe a little bit longer of a horizon.
Some of the priority projects are the big ones. And so just to kind of get started, we're already thinking we're going to phase those into pieces where we can. But I mean, the thing that these rate increases really kind of help with the city and is that, we can take on that street improvement project that we've had to delay because we can't afford to do the utility improvements underneath it, right? And so I think pushing it out much further gets us, back into problems again. And we do have some critical projects that we need to get done. There are critical to the neighborhoods that they live in, whether they realize it or not. We know that we've got pipelines that are deteriorating, pipelines that are filling and backing up. So yes.
And I realize it's a balancing act. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page and just making sure I ask that question. So I see Commissioner O'Donnell has his hand up.
Yeah, it's a new hand, by the way.
Yeah.
Every engineer, I think, takes a finance course that involves the time value of money. And I'm fine with pushing it out 5 years. I like the 8%. It's half of what was originally proposed. I like the 80% because it makes us choose widely as to what we'll do and not do. But if I'm opposed to going out further than that, because with each year, as we all know, a dollar buys less. So our incremental costs might offset any initial savings we make, especially as we extend that time period. So I'm going to stay with proposal number 3 from my viewpoint. Thanks.
All right. So if there any further discussion or motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt a version, 2118 version number 3, which is the 8% over 5 years with an 80% cap on capital improvements.
And I will second that.
All right. Any further discussion?
I'm just trying to figure out where we're going with that. So I don't want this to be a fail.
A question?
Just gotta find it, sorry. There we go.
I hear that. So we were, well, obviously we like, the option that provides the revenue that we think provides the most flexibility, but all of these are, all 3 of these resolutions are a recommendation, and we wouldn't recommend a failure, Commissioner McGriff. We're gonna do a great job with it.
No, I meant failure in terms of the motion failing, not failure of you guys. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with you guys.
Oh yeah, I couldn't tell either. I was like, if it's a concern about the vote or a concern about. So we have a vote. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner O'Donnell, do you have a further question?
Not a question. I would simply say that if in 2 years we have to revisit this, we can. We're in a financial crisis right now with incomes being reduced, and we know that everything we attribute to a commercial venture is going to get passed along in the form of a price increase. So I'm trying to buffer it immediately, knowing that we could revisit it in 2 years if we had to, or at any point in time. Hence the choice I made. Thanks.
All right, so I think we have a motion and a second. Ms. Riggs, will you call the roll on this vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Oh, thanks a lot for taking me first. I wanted to think about it some more.
You can move on to someone else.
Yeah, go on to somebody else.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Okay, I'm going to reluctantly say aye. I really wanted number 2, but I think this is in the best interest of our community, so I'll go aye.
okay, and Mayor Rachel Lau Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right.
Thank you very much. We will.
Mr. Lewis, that was a lot of work to get that one. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I just, we want to do what's right for the community. We appreciate that. And we will, I think it's, since it's a resolution that's effective January 1, we'll work on the public noticing piece and make sure folks know what's coming.
All right. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 9B. I will say it's 8:25. Do we want to take a 5-minute break before we do the mural?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. It's actually, let's come back at 8:30. And I give you 7 minutes or so to grab a bite or a drink or whatever.
Hey, Rocky, do you know what we were doing on July 7th, 2018? I don't know if he's back yet.
He's back, he's muted.
I'm just getting back. What were you saying?
July 7th, 2018, you and I were rededicating the Ermitinger house. The picture just popped up on my watch saying, here are your memories.
And the week after that, I opened my storefront.
Door, yes.
Yep, 3 years will go next week.
Anniversary time.
Yeah, very
Thanks
cool.
for everybody.
Are you offering free tours? Celebrate
Of the
your
store? Yeah, you can come for a free tour of the store.
I'm starting tours this weekend, Friday night. But yeah, I'll be out open this weekend. Come in.
I was joking with the free part. Yeah.
We get a free tour of your store.
I sometimes do preview tours at the beginning of the year for people, so I might do that.
Yeah. All right. Close to having everybody. We need there's Commissioner O'Donnell.
Does he still have a new hand or an old hand?
There's a hand.
All right, so I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to call our regular meeting back to order, and we are starting item number 9B. This is a ordinance establishing a public art mural program. Ms. Reed, are you kicking this one off?
I am. Thank you, Mayor. I can give the staff report if you're ready.
Sure.
Okay, it looks like I am able to share my screen. Thanks, Katie.
And while she's sharing her screen, I just want to say that we are happy to be here. This discussion of murals was a direction of the Commission and Economic Development Department took up this project, and we're happy to be here with the legislative review process. So it's already been to Planning Commission. With that, I'll hand it over to Kelly.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so this is legislative file 21-00002. To amend chapter 1528 of the municipal code. This is the signs chapter. So it's our sign regulations. So the amendment includes the addition of a few definitions to support the mural program, including defining how a public art mural is different from a sign as it relates to our code. It includes criteria and standards for public art murals, which are clear and objective. It includes a process for approval of the public art murals. This is proposed to be handled through the Arts Commission. The Arts Commission is already codified in section 2.26 of the municipal code. It includes identification of zoning districts where the murals will be permitted and language to ensure that First Amendment rights are upheld. In other words, that the code remains content neutral when it comes to the content of signs or murals. So the proposed zoning districts that where murals would be permitted include mixed use downtown, mixed use corridor 1, corridor 2, Willamette Falls downtown district, institutional zones, the general commercial zone, along with any use that's listed under permitted uses in the institutional district, but not located in a non-institutional zone. So this, that last bullet is meant to include schools and religious institutions and other institutional uses that are in many cases in the residential zone. So we didn't want to exclude those buildings and those schools that are, just like an institutional use, but they happen to be in a residential zone. The process that is in the code amendments includes an Arts Commission review. Absent an Arts Commission, the code amendments provide for a staff review of a mural, and that's by the Economic Development staff. In either case, public notice would be provided and the decisions are appealable. Now, the approval criteria for legislative files really is pretty simple. It's whether or not the amendment to our code is consistent with our current comprehensive plan. So the written staff report that was in your packet includes a discussion of how this code amendment is consistent with the listed sections of the comprehensive plan here. And I'm not going to go through all of those, but just summarize to say we do find that it is consistent with many different chapters of our comprehensive plan. And I'll just highlight one, which is goal 1 of the comprehensive plan, community involvement. This murals code process that was spearheaded by the Economic Development Department included ample public engagement, including all the way back to 2014 and 2015 when the overall sign code was updated. That's when this code language was actually first drafted up. But back in 2015, the City Commission didn't adopt that portion of the sign code amendments. So it's been brought back up on your direction, as you know, this year. So there were lots of other listening sessions and work sessions. And then the last meeting that was held was Planning Commission on June 28th. And they recommended to you approval of the proposed amendments. There was some written public comment in your agenda packet. The public testimony at the Planning Commission hearing was also in favor of the amendments. And of course, staff recommends approval. And this is the first reading of the ordinance. The second reading would come to you in 2 weeks if the first reading is approved tonight. And then the amendment would be effective 30 days after the adoption of the ordinance. And that's all I have. I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Reed. I know I have a small list, but I'm looking to the commission. So Commissioner Smith.
Boy, that brought back some memories. We've come a long way, and I'm glad that we're revisiting this. I felt like when we kind of changed the sign code that we made a mistake in not really trying to fix this, and so it's taken a while. I don't have a whole lot. I guess a couple of things. I'm just trying to refresh my brain in terms of all these past discussions we have. Essentially, there is no distinction between a sign and a mural, correct? I mean, they're the same thing.
Well, the public art mural would be, by definition, dedicated to the city through an easement. So that's really the main difference. And then there's
everything else. It's essentially a sign.
I would say yes, that the sign size limitations in the code would then not apply to the public art murals.
So one of the, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, essentially what the public art murals is allow signs that would otherwise violate the code in certain areas when an easement is dedicated to the city and the other steps are taken. So they are signs. I think one of the things you're referencing is that from the city's perspective, we can't really regulate the content, whether it's a sign or a mural, and if it says "Eat at Joe's" or if it's a picture of Oregon pioneers, we can't really look at that without having issues.
That's mostly what I meant. There was a couple of things, and I really probably don't want to get into this discussion tonight. This might be a fix that we could come to later, or little other bits that come to mind, because there were in the past conversations about rooftop murals and signs. Oregon City did install a rooftop mural or a rooftop sign as part of its tourism plan on the top of the building at the elevator, down from the elevator, which was kind of blown away. But so, and I know that would have been a city sign, probably would have been exempted. But I think that in the past, well, I think if we start murals again, the conversation of rooftop murals and signs may come back. because that was actually a really huge conversation at one point in Oregon City, so that we were looking down upon visually pleasing things maybe rather than roofs. At one time, most of the roofs in downtown were covered with blue tarps, and there was a lot of discussions on how to try to make those more pleasing. So I would love to kind of, I'm trying to, there's a fine line between, you know, in terms of the content, but also a fine line between art and signs and other things. For instance, you know, if there was an event where, you know, you have kind of an installation of, let's say, Christmas lights on the tops of the buildings that create images, that would also kind of, I would assume, fall under this. Things like projections. We talked about projecting signs in there, but actually projecting images. You know, we do that on the elevator. I know other businesses in downtown have projected things onto their building for holidays. We do it at Liberty Plaza. We do different things. So I'm kind of curious, you know, in the future, if we're talking about installation of lights over Main Street and starting to maybe project lights or project images in the alleyways or different things, how that falls into imagery in terms of signs and visuals. That's a whole separate thing, and it's probably not something we want to tackle tonight, but I think those questions may come as this bit gets fixed. So I think I would be curious about how we address those kind of things in the future. I would just say great work. I don't, you know, see anything. It's a lot there to read and go through, but I think it's well done, and I remember most of it from the past discussions, so thank you.
Right, Commissioner McGriff.
Yes, as you can well imagine, I took a deep dive on this. So a couple of things that I noted. Number one, on the map that was attached to the packet that had little red squares around the designated historic sites. Some of those are commercial buildings. Some of those are zoned commercial, but are residential uses. And I would really not like to see, for instance, a mural on the side of the Lynn Jones house. I don't know how we could exclude those, but where the buildings are primarily were designed and built as residential, I don't want to see murals on those. There's not really room for them. If you look at their facades, I mean, they're houses. Now, if you're talking about the Ely Brothers store on John Quincy Adams and 7th, yes, there's probably some room to put something like that on it because it's a commercial building. It was built, you know, at the turn of the century. Things like that would be appropriate. I don't think they're appropriate on many of the buildings that we listed, or at least the squares that we listed in the map that said, oh yeah, you could put it here, 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 and here. I don't know if we can amend that.
Then, yeah, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Commissioner McGriff. The code, not the map, but I guess the code actually includes some language that says the murals are only to be allowed on non-residential structures. And that applies citywide. So not just the historic residential structures, but we're really only looking at murals on commercial structures or mixed use, the commercial portions of the mixed use structure.
Let me give you a what if. So the Lenny Jones house is zoned commercial, has been used residentially since it was built. So let's say by some crazy stance, somebody uses it for a commercial purpose and then they want to put a mural on the side of it.
Right. Yeah. So I guess in that case, if it were considered a commercial use, then that would just follow the HRB policy that's also in your packet for murals on historic structures. And so depending on the details of where on the building that mural was proposed, then it might go to the HRB for review, or it might be a staff review. But then it would go on to the Arts Commission after that.
Yeah, I don't even, I mean, I know this sounds selfish, but I don't even want to give the opportunity to do that, because the houses there along High Street that are that have been built residentially, they have many character defining features. The way the windows are placed, the landscaping, all of that, they just don't lend themselves to putting murals on them. I don't know how you would, I mean, physically, sure, artists can come up with all sorts of things. So that's one concern I have. Then the other thing is when we have institutional in, let me quote the section here. I'm in the sign code, let's see, section, hang on here. 1528.090 talks about 3 public art murals may be permitted within the following zoning districts. So there are parks included in institutional. If we own it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, so let's just say conceivably somebody could put a mural on one of the bathroom structures or something like that.
Right.
Okay, then the other thing under C in that same section, approval process, the first prepositional phrase in number 1 and number 2, I don't support that at all. I don't ever want to see the fact that we don't have an arts commission. I don't want, you know, Rocky fought long and hard to get it back. And, you know, this is saying that if we don't have an arts commission, then a department can do it. And I don't think it's appropriate for a department to be approving a public art mural. I think we're going to try to keep the arts commission and not have it go dormant or anything of that sort. I don't support that. And I don't, other than that, I'm okay with everything else. With those 2 concerns that I have.
Related to your second concern, the problem we were trying to solve is what if they stop meeting and someone submits a mural application and we don't have an arts commission to take it to, or arts committee to take it to. And so we were trying to plan for worst case scenario, hoping that we don't have to use it.
Okay. Commissioner McGriff, you're muted.
I don't support it being in there. You're trying to solve a problem that I don't think is going to happen.
All right, I have comments on this one too, but I'll wait. Commissioner Smith.
Sorry, I had a couple questions, I guess I forgot. I do agree with the question or the issue that Commissioner McGriff brought up. There is a lot of houses in the McLaughlin neighborhood that are not houses. That are commercial use. And so I think that's a valid question to really understand if there's commercial businesses in old residential houses that are in, you know, a neighborhood that might be, that kind of is a varied thing. The other, I kind of do agree about, I mean, I understand there's got to be an option if there's no arts commission, but we kind of let, you know, the arts commission go and then we kind of forgot about it. And so I don't want that to happen. I agree with Commissioner McGriff on that. I guess one of my questions was the existing murals, what was left of the murals when the murals stopped, they were all grandfathered in essentially. Now, what my question is, and after that point, it was basically, okay, their murals have come to an end. The murals that exist are okay. If they want to be maintained and restored, they can be. But from that date on to today, we've had a lot of murals go up around town on commercial buildings. What do we do with the murals that have happened in the time that murals weren't allowed? Do we go back and go through a process? How do we deal with those? Because I don't think most of those were dealt with code enforcement, but there were murals that have popped up on, you know, houses and on commercial buildings throughout Oregon City that are there today that didn't exist when we put a halt to the murals. So I don't know how we deal with those.
I think we have dealt with some through code enforcement over the years. So I think we would continue to do that, and then they would have the option of submitting their mural to the Arts Commission for approval.
Okay. All right, I think that's it.
All right. I don't see any other hands, so I'll go through my list. So I'm wondering if to address Commissioner McGriff's concern about the properties that are within the McLaughlin Conservation District and other historically designated structures. I assume those are the properties you're concerned about, Commissioner McGriff, correct? Yeah. If we've identified them, is it possible to just exclude them? And just say no historic none of these historic structures can have murals?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of ways we could handle this. We could add a line to the HRB policy saying that any historic structure that was originally constructed as a residence that the Historic Review Board would have to review that, or we could add language into the Chapter 1528 itself that talks about where we talk about that residential uses are not eligible for murals. We could add that buildings originally built as residences and designated as historic are not eligible as well. So I think one of the, option B would exclude them entirely, and option A would leave the door open, but only through HRB review.
I would prefer option B. I mean, I have all, I know all of them. I mean, I can picture them in my head right now. And the way that they are designed and built, it's not a lot of option for it.
I agree. I would go for option B. Historic structures. There's plenty of other places to put murals. I just think we should be preserving that character in our community. So if there's a way, that's where I'm leaning on that one. It also wasn't clear to me, since we're on HRB, with the item, if it's going to HRB, would it first go to the Arts Commission? It wasn't clear to me. Like, is the Arts Commission in that approval process and then it goes to HRB?
So it would go to HRB first, or, we would apply the HRB policy. So either staff could approve it potentially, or it would go to HRB. If it gets approved through this historic process, then it goes to Arts Commission.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. To me, that wasn't clear. And then back to section C2, which is the approval process when there is no Art Commission that's active. I understand Commissioner McGriff's concern. I have the same concern about C2. I'm uncomfortable with it going to the Economic Development Department with no public hearing. I feel like we have this robust public hearing approval process if we have an Arts Commission, but then if there's no Arts Commission, it just goes to staff. So I guess in lieu of that, I think it should go to the City Commission where we can have a public hearing and do all the full noticing as you're suggesting in number 1. That would be my suggestion. I'm a little uncomfortable with it just going to staff with. I think these need public hearings. They need the neighborhood notification. They need all of that. And so that's where I'm at on that one.
I think James should start taking an art conservation class so he becomes an art expert.
Well, I want to find a venue where we can have a public hearing. Yeah. And I believe the Planning Commission, this has been through them. They were uncomfortable with it going to them, and therefore they nominated the Economic Development Department, or somebody nominated the Economic Development. But I really feel like we need a public hearing process in lieu of an Arts Commission. So that's the only solution I can come up with.
I would agree with that. I think Commissioner Smith will be coming into the hearings with his walker and testifying. So I'm not worried about anything getting past him.
Hopefully soon.
Can you tell me how much is the appeal fee for the appeal process?
Go ahead, Laura.
It's intended to match the normal appeal fee of $250. So you'll see a separate resolution that includes the HRV policy as well as a resolution for the appeal, or for the application and appeal fee. with the second reading of the code. So it'll be back before you, but it's intended to be 250.
I always have heartburn over that appeal fee, but I don't know that I have another good suggestion. So I'm open to commission discussion on that one. And then lastly, I guess the very end of the section, let's see, where's that? It's in D4. Wrote down where it was at. So this is also about the appeal. And then it kind of discusses at the very end, murals that are created without approval through the aforementioned process are not otherwise exempt, and shall not be deemed public art murals. So I feel like that doesn't really get at what's going to happen if someone decides to paint a mural. To me, this just says, well, that means it's just not going to end up on the city's list, and we're not going to do anything about it. So I assume this is a code enforcement, and there would be a requirement to remove it if it ended up not being on the city's approved public art list. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. If it's not considered a public art mural, then it would be subject to the city's regular sign code. So if it violates the size requirements there, then we would pursue code enforcement.
Just to clarify that as well, if it meets our sign code and looks like what we would imagine a mural looks like, then it's just a sign.
So are you saying then it would just be allowed? It's just not a piece of art?
Yep, it's allowed today. So it would continue to be allowed because we're that content neutral. We can't look at the content of a sign. So if it meets the height and size requirements of a sign that we can have today, but it may look like a mural, that would be okay. It just wouldn't be on our list.
Okay. So there really isn't like an enforcement piece of like, it doesn't look like art and therefore you have to remove it. That doesn't exist. Okay. Okay. Because yeah, I was trying to understand it where that ended seemed very open-ended. And I thought Commissioner Smith brought up a great point about rooftops. So this doesn't, even though it says exterior wall, that does not include a roof. So murals can't be put on roofs tops with this.
Correct.
And was that addressed by the Planning Commission or in public comment, or was that discussed?
Not that I'm aware of, but I think some economic development staff are with us and they might be able to answer that.
I see Matthew and James.
Sorry, what was the question?
Were rooftop murals addressed in the conversations with the Planning Commission or with public comment?
I don't believe so, no.
We did talk a lot about, well, we did talk to some extent this year, but definitely a lot in 2014 and 15 about making sure it didn't stick up above a roof, like if it was on the side of a building, but not necessarily on top of the building.
Yeah, no 3D signs or protruding. Yeah. Okay, well, maybe that's an item for the Arts Commission to suggest and bring back to us after they get put together. I do think there is some desire to have some rooftop murals. I think it's a great idea, especially with the amount of people that we have at the bluff or on top of the hill from the elevator looking down. It would just add to the look of the city.
That's exactly right, Mayor. We'd certainly like to improve the look from the bluff. That's part of the tourism plan. And even to the point of having this, we had the staff and others had a discussion even about rooftop gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that has to be a part of the process.
Okay, so I'll assume that topic is going to come back to us.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner McGriff.
I just wanted to point out the same thing that you mentioned about the inconsistency about existing murals. It just sort of leaves it like a hanging chad. I mean, I think we need to sort of address it. It's either they're non-conforming and they stay, or they go through some sort of review. I I think just ignoring it is not the way to go. If people are going to follow one rule, then I think everybody's got to follow the rule, whatever that is.
So in 2014, we did go around the city and identify all wall signs or murals that exceeded the size of the wall size allowed, and then we put them on an exempt list. And then when we changed our code, every new sign since then either should have been exempt because we have a list of exempt things like city signs, or it should comply with our sign code as is. So I'm not aware of anything that is in between. If there is, we're happy to do code enforcement, take a look at it.
Yeah, I know this is, well, could you give an example of one somewhere? I mean, Rob, that he knew where tons of them were, and I'm thinking, okay, do I not know the city as well as I think I do?
Actually,
yeah, I know a lot of them. I just don't want to point out individual businesses and, you know.
Well, don't point out the business. Tell me what the sign says, and then I'll probably recognize it.
I think the images on Kelly's slideshow were all from that list that we took off, but it does include Nelson's Nautilus, where it says pool is one, and then there's those ones downtown, the music sign on Wally's.
Those have been there since Moses was a pup.
The school, the private school in McLaughlin, yeah.
I remember when St. John the Apostle went through approval process for that because my son was going there and I made him go to the city. So that's through something. That's right. Remember.
Okay, so it sounds like I know Commissioner McGriff and I were in general agreement, but we need to talk about some of the if there's general consensus on making changes to the text. The one in particular was about the Economic Development Department in lieu of having an Arts Commission. I guess my suggestion was that it be changed to that it would go to the City Commission and follow the same process as the Arts Commission regarding hearings and notices. But
can I make a suggestion on how to fix that? Rather than start out the sentence saying, unless an Arts Commission is inactive, just leave 1 and 2 the way they are. Add a number 3 that says, if for some reason there isn't an if there's no Arts Commission, the City Commission shall act in its stead, or something to that effect. It just cleans it up. Because you're starting out the sentence very negatively, like, whoa, what's going on here? Are they not active? Are they inactive?
And that gives the commission an incentive to reenact the commission once they get all the murals coming in.
That's true. All right, so maybe, I guess is that the only edit that we have?
The one about that we suggested of adding, saying that if the building was originally constructed as a residential structure, designated landmark, that murals are not, we don't support any murals, or murals are not allowed, or whatever.
Yeah, it was the option 2 item.
Yeah.
Ms. Turway?
And then I just wanted to circle back to the rooftop question. If you are interested in having murals on rooftops, now is by far the easiest time to include it.
I would agree.
Just so you don't have to go through the legislative process again.
Well, you brought up one about it not hanging out over the building. You know, it can't be a big blow up thing that somebody puts on the top of their building and it's some kind of I don't know, 3D thing or whatever that's laying there. I would agree with you. I would just assume we put it in here if we want to allow it. And obviously it'd be subject to, you know, as I discussed with Mr. Graham, I said, I think that those roofs are not going to be suitable for putting vegetation on them because of the structural issues. I've got so many permits where people wanted to put in rain gardens or rooftop gardens, and the structural requirements are just, you know, you don't want to go there.
A lot of weight. So it sounds like
a lot of weight.
Perhaps just adding rooftops as in addition to the exterior wall in that section.
And maybe anything else they can think of that would help make it look decent, or, you know, whatever, to make it fit the rest of it. So you look at a roof the same way you would look at it as a wall, I guess.
Okay, so I'm looking to staff if we can address all these changes in a motion versus bringing this back. Do you have a recommendation? I can entertain either.
So,
We can just-
Mayor Lyle Smith, as this is an ordinance, it's got to be either I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, as an ordinance, it's got to be the same as posted, or those changes have to be read in full. So it's difficult to make those adjustments on the fly.
Yes, that would be difficult to read in. So it sounds like you guys, staff will be bringing this item back to us.
Do we need a motion to continue?
Yeah, let me check. Is there any other comments from the other commissioners who've been kind of quiet on this one? Mr. Morrow, O'Donnell? General consensus? All right. All right, so yeah, we probably do need a motion to continue.
I would move to continue the first reading of ordinance number 21-1011, amending the Oregon City Municipal Code, Chapter 1525, and establishing a public art mural program for two weeks from now.
Second.
What, the 21st?
Okay. Is that date okay with staff before we do the vote? Okay, I see a yes. All right, Ms. Riggs.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Moving on to 9C, we have the second reading of ordinance number 21-1010, amending the Oregon City Municipal Code. This is regarding reimbursement districts. This is a second reading. I don't know if we need any discussion on this item. I don't see any discussion, so in that case, is there a motion?
Denise, you're muted.
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 21-10.
Seconded.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Kabizman.
Ordinance number 21-1010, an ordinance of the City of Oregon City amending Oregon City Municipal Code Chapter 3.20 reimbursement districts.
All right,
Commissioner Denise
Ms.
McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel L. Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Moving along. Item number 9D. This is our City Commission biennium goals and strategies. Mr. Conkle.
Mayor, evening commissioner. So staff is recommending approval of the City Commission goals, strategies, and timeline developed through the 2021 City Commission goal setting retreat. I think you guys have, everyone's seen this multiple times. There was a question about during the budget committee process, review process, we added in replacing the restroom facility at the cemetery, updating the city's website, and completing the designation of the remaining city parks as charter parks. We did not add those specifically as tasks under a goal. We felt like those were identified through the budget process, incorporated as specific projects in the budget. But I'd leave it up to the commission if that's something they feel like they would like to add or approve as proposed tonight.
We'll say, I also asked about getting pictures. We wanted to get I asked about getting Commissioner Marl a picture so that he doesn't have like a spotlight on him of him standing out. It's like dark picture, dark. There's Adam. Welcome to the commission. And I know Ms. Riggs is working on professional photos for us, and that will be resolved.
What was the date, Katie?
So it's actually going to be before our next meeting, which is July 21st. So if you can, please put that on your calendar. Oh, Adam, are you
Commissioner
gone?
Morris, he's out of town.
Oh, shoot. Shoot. Okay, well, I'll move that then. My bad. I'll move that to the following meeting then. So that would be the first meeting in August.
Do we really have to have our faces on the front of it? Maybe on the inside flap. It's just like I opened that up and I went, oh my God.
Okay.
Frank, you're not saying anything now. Speak up.
I'm on thin ice on this.
I mean, I know your hair looks good on the picture, but you know.
Shouldn't cast the first stone there, young lady.
All right. So if there are no edits, is there a motion to approve our biennial goals and strategy?
So moved.
Second,
All right. Any further discussion?
without the pictures.
Seeing none, Ms. Riggs.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Mayor Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. We're on to item number 10, which is communications. City Manager Cole.
I guess so. I didn't have any, though. I know that there was a question about the fireworks over the 4th of July and the incident down at Clackamas Park. So I'm going to turn it over to Captain Davis to give an update to the commission.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes I have problems with the mic, so I want to give you a quick update on the 4th of July. Overall, from patrol and what I saw, the volume of fireworks, both legal and illegal, were significantly reduced from previous years. Our first firework calls came in about 6 p.m. And during swing shift, our officers assigned themselves to those complaints, and they either called the RP or responded to every call. During the overlap, we had a 2-officer car, and they were assigned to go to every firework related call for service. We had approximately 48 calls from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. The car responded to address each complaint in the order it was received. Some complaints regarding legal fireworks were handled by phone, and they talked to the reporting person. All aerial and illegal firework complaints were handled by informant contact or an area check. Our officers contacted multiple groups as part of the detail. As you can imagine, as often with the case, people lighting off illegal fireworks stop doing so when it's on a patrol car in the area or in their neighborhood. Other officers on shift also addressed firework complaints during high visibility patrols. No citations were issued. For us to issue a citation, our officers actually have to watch someone light the fireworks or commit an offense. I'm not aware of any incidents of any structure fires this year, any property damage, or any response from the fire department. There were 2 small fires. One was on a tree, and that was extinguished by the time we got there. And then there was another one that one of our officers was flagged down at the Clackamas Community College, and our sergeant was able to put that out with a fire extinguisher. Since the 4th of July, we've had maybe a handful of complaints. We've been addressing those as they come in. You guys have any questions regarding 4th of July? Okay, I'll give you a quick update on the riot that occurred on June 18th at Clackamas Park. This remains an active and ongoing investigation. We're looking at all evidence, and we're continuing to identify individuals that were committing crimes. Once those individuals are identified, we'll be forwarding those reports to the Clackamas County District Attorney's Office for consideration of charges.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner McGriff.
No, Captain Davis, you said that no citations were issued. Were there any warnings issued?
There were multiple groups that we talked to that we believe maybe illegal fireworks are coming from. We didn't see any evidence of that, and they denied it. So when we did talk to them, we did warn them that you could be cited if you are lighting illegal fireworks.
But nobody got a written warning.
No written warnings that I'm aware of.
See, I think that's the incentive. You get a written warning, and you're probably not going to do it again, because I don't know how well that works.
Well, same thing with the citation or written warning. We have to give that to the individual that is lighting those. So unless we see that or we know that individual is, we can't just give it to a group. So we'll talk to the group as a whole and explain what could happen if they are lighting illegal fireworks.
Right, any other, Commissioner O'Donnell?
I'll just say, I think the chances of driving up and successfully finding somebody in the process of lighting a firework with a squad car are about slim and none. And I hope in the future we consider a more aggressive thing, maybe some officers on bicycles or whatever. Because I know some of these jurisdictions, when they lay that first fine out there, the word gets around in a hurry. And I think I'm actually kind of disappointed in the effort, but we can talk about that offline. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate the comments and the report. Captain Davis, I emailed him last night and said, hey, can you give a report out? I think these two were two hot topics that all of us have likely heard from many folks in our community. I was actually surprised. I heard a lot more about fireworks than I did about the incident at the park. I thought it would have kind of been the reverse of that, so I was surprised. But we made it through the holiday with no incidents, no fires. And a significant, it sounds like I've heard from multiple folks that it was a significant reduction in fireworks use this year. So I think overall, hopefully folks were able to enjoy their 4th of July holiday via other means and managed to not get any tickets. I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell, though. If you drive up in a patrol car, I think you're going to lose your effectiveness or being able to catch folks. So I like the bicycle idea. I don't know if you guys have bikes.
They do.
We do.
The city of Portland does, but
yeah, you've never seen them at concerts in the park?
I have. Yeah, I have seen them at concerts in the park, but I've never seen them around town, I guess. So, all right. Thank you, Captain Davis. City Manager Conkle, do you have anything else?
No, not anything else. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other communications?
Yeah, I think so.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yeah, I think we've got work to do. There's some things that seem to drag on. And one of them is this mitigation effort that I think the commission as a whole wants to move forward on it and nothing happens on it. I'm getting multiple requests as to where that stands. Probably an update on the lifting of the sidewalks and what we're going to do with that and the trees. And maybe a conversation that we need to have in the future on dredging to increase the quality of water in the cove. Because I think we're heading for a problem with low water conditions, high heat, and lack of circulation. I think we've got work to do on those three things. And I'll just bring it up in an open meeting. We can pursue it as we see fit.
Okay, Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, I just want to report to all of you that thank you to John Lewis, our Public Works Director, Vance Walker, the ODOT crew, and the Public Works Director for the City of West Lynn. We now have a spotless bridge. We had a lot of fun out there. It wasn't too hot, and the bridge is clean. And we made the West Lynn Tidings and the Oregon City News. And I got a nice little note from the Region 1 Director. So that's what we've been doing. I guess we have a meeting that we're trying to schedule with the City of West Lynn to talk about various transportation projects. So that continues. Willamette Falls and Landings has hired a new director. She's the former executive director of the Hoover Minthorn House in Newburgh. And she is in age younger than the committee members. So that is a good thing. And they've been meeting pretty regularly. Other than that, DOCA is meeting. We lost our clean and safe person, and we have been trying desperately to hire a new one. And just like everything you read in the paper, jobs are out there and they're paying a considerable amount of wage, and you can't get anybody to apply. So we think we're going to do a subcontract with a private party to do some of the weeding and things that, you kind of hope your adjacent property owner will do it, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So that's going to happen shortly. We've got lots of suckers coming up out all of the trees. And I also want to just thank John Lewis and his staff for making sure that the flower baskets got watered during the heat, because they still look really darn good. And a lot of other things kind of curled up and kind of died. So it's kind kind of been kind of interesting, kind of going through that and looking at some of our plants. And I think some of our trees that were, might not have had a problem or got stressed. So, encourage people to water and keep their plants alive. And when we schedule the next bridge cleanup, I'll make sure to give you guys more advance notice so you can. I was expecting Frank to come and supervise because we had no supervisors.
I called in when you were there. I thought you were a jumper, so I called that in.
All right, Mr. Koppel, do you have something else?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to provide just a brief update. In consultation with the mayor and staff, this upcoming next Tuesday, we have geologic hazards, water rate discussion, and cross street banner utility poles. And then in August is when the deferred maintenance or the sidewalk street tree issue is coming back. We had some issues we got the water rate needs to go onto the ballot by August. I think it's the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
The geologic hazards was requested by staff. That was the day we could get Professor Scott Burns confirmed. So the deferred the sidewalk street tree got bumped into the August work session. The Urban Renewal Commission asked staff to reach back out to Restore Cap in November, December of last year. That was done. Contact and discussions with Restore Cap in mid-January. They came back with a plan in mid-April, but it included Mr. Darrow and Mr. Runyon, and the Urban Renewal Commission was not interested in working with Mr. Darrow and requested that it just be about mitigation and restoration. Late April, that was conveyed to Mr. Marini at Restore Cap. They contacted the city again with some questions and the desire to enter into an LOI like we had done the first time around in mid-June, and we're meeting with them on July 9th. So we're trying to be responsive. They are not under contract with us. They're doing this work on their own dime and time. But we do understand the desire of the Urban Renewal Commission to move forward with that. I think that part of this also is that Mr. Darrow submitted another request, which we just rejected. I'm not sure if that is what individuals are referencing when they say nothing is happening. We are working with Restore Cap and they are trying to move forward with some options, but they are really interested in entering into some type of an arrangement because of the amount of time and money that they're starting to expend on this project. So just some quick updates.
Yes, thank you for that. So that was in response to what Commissioner O'Donnell was saying. Commissioner O'Donnell, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, Mr. Darrow is not part of the equation at all. I mean, what we want to do is get moving on this, get our place in line and start seeing what we can do about generating some mitigation funding. The other thing I've asked individually, and I know that nothing happens without 3 or more of the commissioners. I'm concerned about the water quality and what's about to happen in the cove. And I look at that gravel bar and I don't see how we get any circulation whatsoever. I'd like some exploration on either we prove or disprove this tidal flow and its ability to cleanse the cove. And the only way you do that is by opening up that channel. So I'd like this commission to join me and get some direction to staff. It's like, pursue this and find out what we need to do. Thanks.
Yes. Yes.
Well, before I think we have to have a discussion. I mean, this is some of the work that Restore Cap is doing. It's urban renewal property. If this is something that we would like to look into, it's another task at this point. I guess I'd prefer to see what Restore Cap has to say, because they're actually tasked with looking at mitigation and restoration, of which I think they're well aware that water quality, both temperature and stagnation and blue-green algae blooms in the cove are a concern. I would just hate to be doing redundant work.
Well, I suggest coordinating with them. And the first step is, what does this permit allow us or not allow us to do? And at this point, I'm not sure we know that. So I'm pushing pretty hard on it because I think we're entering into a difficult situation with water quality in that cove.
Are you talking about the permit with the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes, to remove gravel from the mouth of that entrance to the cove.
Well, it seems like this is an urban renewal conversation, though.
Well, do not things happen at the direction of the city commission?
Well, they do. And, I think when staff proposed a couple of things on the urban renewal agenda, I will say it surprised me, recreation, things at the cove and stuff like that. I think staff probably heard quite a bit. And I assume, maybe incorrectly, but I assume Mr. Graham and others may have, I hope that they had took that information that we provided, our concerns about water quality, and made them aware of the Army Corps of Engineers permit and all that kind of stuff, that maybe they were taking the lead themselves into that, in addition to maybe the conversations with Restore Cap. So
We can hope.
Incorrect assumption, but Mr. Conkle.
I guess is this in reference to Mr. Herman referencing multiple dogs getting sick at the cove?
It is not.
What is it?
reference
Where
to
is the questions about the water quality? Because we did run out and pulled water tests based on that, which happened to be erroneous. We have had that blue-green algae bloom when the water starts to get stagnant in there. So I don't think it's not what we're seeing right now. I anticipate if we continue with this heat, it will be an issue this summer, as it has been. I think we had one last year. I can't remember if we had one the year before or if it was 2 years before that.
So I want to be clear. This is not a reaction to anything Mr. Herman has to say. This is based on historical knowledge, based on my 5 years of service here, and the fact that former developers, not including Ed Darrow, were balking at that as an attraction because nobody wants to live in a frog pond, and it's a safety matter. And then we had economic development coming there wanting to rent kayaks in the cove. And it's like, I don't think that exactly fits considering the concerns that we may be experiencing. So what it is part of the overall economic development plan and the safety of the community. Jerry Herman's not part of it. The only part that Jerry Herman plays in it is his belief that tidal flow will purge the cove. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to prove or disprove it. Thanks.
Okay. Is there, I feel like we're having a full discussion of an item at the end of this meeting. Is there general consensus on where we want to provide direction to Mr. Conkle? I know Commissioner O'Donnell's brought it up. I see Commissioner Smith shaking his head. I think we need to be really clear. It sounds like the Restore Cap item is moving forward, so that leaves the only item is the water quality and the Army Corps of Engineers permit and question about dredging and water quality stuff. Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, I think that we can provide staff direction to get that information to the Urban Renewal Commission so that they can move forward on it. I think it would have been, I know that sometimes writing a billion emails isn't helpful, but the last I heard was we were waiting to hear back from Restore Cap, and that was 3 months ago, and all this intervening stuff, I wasn't aware of it, and I would have liked to have been aware of it, but I guess I'm just really puzzled, and I don't want to get into a discussion about it. I'm just puzzled by the inclusion of a third party that we had already indicated that we don't want anything to do with it. Slowed this up, so.
All right. I think this is an urban renewal topic. So
it is.
It is. And so Commissioner O'Donnell, perhaps you can follow up with Mr. Conkle and Mr. Graham on being very specific about what your interest is and talk to Commissioner McGriff about an urban renewal agenda item.
My interest is simple, Mayor. I want to get in line for mitigation funding. I want to formalize the agreement. I don't need any third parties like Mr. Darrow or anybody else. And I want to get moving on it. I want to get in line and stay in line. And as far as the water quality, I want to see what we can do to make a determination if this program works, because I think we're at a very good period in time to test it. This is going to be the worst conditions for flow in that cove. So I think we're going to miss that window to test it, but I think we can't lose sight of it. Things cannot just drift off into the distance, never to be followed up. So maybe they don't move fast enough for me, but they need to be in our sights. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, it's not clear to me about the Army Corps of Engineers permit, if that's expired, if there's sounded to me at one time that maybe it was expiring but if not, there's dredging opportunity. So I don't feel like I know enough in order to, at this point, give direction or anything. So, all right. I feel like we beat this one to death. So the last communications I'd like to mention is today we had a kickoff or a launch. Wasn't really a ribbon cutting. It was a drive away of a shuttle bus, but we were kicking off the last mile shuttle. This is a brand new shuttle service to enhance our transit access in Oregon City. I really hope we have some good ridership. This will help connect some residential areas within the city and help pick up people that may not live immediately adjacent to some of our couple of central transit lines. So hopefully reach more people, increase ridership, help bridge the gap and make some connectivity successes between residents who would like to use more transit and our limited transit routes that we have in the city. So that was a kickoff. It was a partnership between Oregon City, Clackamas County, TriMet. And so COVID kind of delayed that project, but we were ready to do the kickoff. I spoke today and Commissioner McGriff was there as well. And so the shuttle bus is ready and it's a good thing for Oregon City. So if you're a transit rider, please look into that. And that's all I have for tonight. So I think that's it for communications, and it is 9:30. We're going to go to executive session right after this meeting adjourns. So let's try to come back to executive session in 5 minutes, like 9:35, 9:36. This meeting, Mr. Kabizman?
Sorry, I was just waving goodbye.
Oh, okay. I was about to adjourn.
I want to know what happened to the other guy.
Wow.
He's still recovering.
Good, good. Well, at least you came out on top.
All right, this meeting's adjourned and we'll go to executive session.